Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Ground and Pound Podcast, a show where, as always, we're hitting you with them elbows of knowledge. And UFC Fight Night, Duncan versus Moicano is here. And as always, your boys here on the Ground and Pound Podcast are here to break the whole thing down, starting off in the early prelims, heading to the main event. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Carlos. What's happening, Carlos?
Absolutely nothing, brother.
It may not be a pay-per-view, but you know we're consistent here on the channel to break these ones down, and we're going to dive right into the early prelims and get this one rolling. And kicking things off at UFC Fight Night, Duncan taking on Moicano. We've got Dione Barbosa taking on Melissa Gatto. Carlos, who you got in this one?
In this one, I'm going to go with Barbosa. I just think Barbosa is a little quicker. I don't think her striking is as good as Gatto, but I think Gatto's a little bit more technical, but I think Barbosa's a little quicker on her feet. I think she quicker to the point of attack. I think she carries a little bit more power, but I do feel that Gatto's probably a little bit more accurate. I think that Barbosa's got very nice throws. If she can get close the distance without getting touched up a bit, I know she's going to be able to get in the clinch, get this to the ground to make it work out for her. And I think once it's down on the ground there, I think Barbosa is going to have good top control. She can implement some ground and pound if she has to, and she's going to be a submission threat down there. Gatto, obviously, she's skilled on the ground as well, but I just think Barbosa is a little step above her on the ground. I think she moves a little better down there. She transitions nicely from position to position. So I'm going to go with Barbosa to get it done.
Yeah, two for Barbosa here. When you're watching tape on her, obviously a judoka by trade, and she's got much improved striking, as we saw in that Karine Silva performance. I thought she was robbed in that one. Obviously, Karine Silva, a high-level UFC formidable opponent in this division, but I think she won that fight. I think she got robbed, and I think she showed an improved skill set, and the commentary team talked a lot about Barbosa working with Chris Cyborg on her striking, and I think that it showed. She looked a lot more measured in there, a little bit better on the feet. It's not that she was, levels above in the striking, but enough that she was able to use it as a weapon and not just utilize her grappling and her judoka background, but she was able to mix in takedowns and take the back early and late in round one in that fight. And I thought as well that another thing that shows with her striking is that none of it's wild, none of it's looping. It's all tight and crisp. She uses knees in the clinch. She's able to throw you in the clinch. And I think when you look at Melissa Gatto, you go back and look at her previous performance where we're talking 2 years ago now. So a long layoff for her. I'm not sure if that's down to injury or inactivity based off of the matchmaking, but coming off of a 2-year layoff against a killer and a fighter in Barbosa that is fighting a high-level competition, who's in there and active, making improvements, I got to go with Barbosa. I think Gatto has a nice ground game. I think she's got good jiu-jitsu, but I think she lacks the wrestling, and I think Barbosa can really control where this fight takes place. I think Melissa Gatto's got decent striking, nice teeps up the middle, nice hands. I think on the feet, this could be very 50-50. I might even give Gatto the edge, but I think Barbosa's ability to kind of mix in the clinch, maybe get some, kind of throws into that clinch with judo takedowns here where she can get into side control and beat her up. I think Barbosa's ability to be able to have the top control and kind of dictate where this fight takes place is going to be the deciding factor here. So give me Dione Barbosa here to get this one done. The 2-year layoff has me kind of spooked here for Gatto, but I think if it plays out on the feet, Gatto might have a little bit of success. Women's MMA can be tricky at times, but give me Barbosa to get this one done, mixing in all the skill sets. And next up at UFC Fight Night, Duncan taking on Moicano. We've got Azamat Bekoev taking on Tresean Gore. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I'm going to have to go with Bekoev. Gore, I think he's the better looking striker. I think his strikes come out a little shorter, a little tighter, straighter. Gore does have heavy leg kicks, which he doesn't throw anyway. He throws maybe 1 or 2 each fight. I wish he would throw it more often. He'd probably find a little bit more success, but and he's kind of stiff. And I don't know if he's kind of stiff or if he's just hesitant to throw because he has that feeling like he's afraid to get tired in the cage or something. But either way, Bekoev, he's loose, he's relaxed, he's going to push the pace. He's going to look for those strikes. His strikes are a little bit looping, but they're looping, they're strong. And for somebody that needs a little bit of whip on his strikes, on the inside when he's fighting, whether it's the clinch or in ground and pound, he has very short short range power. Like he doesn't have to get full extension to be able to hurt you. And once he gets on top, he has very good top control. I believe he's going to get Gore to the ground anyway, because Gore will defend, but Bekoev will just keep going for takedowns after he strikes, going for takedown after he strikes, because that's his game plan anyway. And even if it stays on the feet, I think Bekoev will probably be able to hurt him on the feet as well. And I just feel that if he doesn't get a finish, Bekoev will probably win just by being busier, but I feel he's going to get the finish on Gore.
Yeah, Bekoev versus Beetlejuice here, and you can't tell me that Tresean Gore doesn't look like our friend right here. Yeah, and let's be honest, at this point, Tresean Gore is really just, hanging around. Yeah, Bekoev's a big favorite for a reason in this one, and I don't really see what Tresean Gore is going to be able to do at this point in his career. 5-4, obviously coming off the Ultimate Fighter, and let's be honest, there's nothing fighter about him. I think he's going to be outclassed everything in this fight when it comes to him and Bekoev. Bekoev, a good wrestler. He showed, and even in his U3 fight, that he will push a pace with the wrestling. He will, look to attempt those double legs and those single legs, back you up against the fence with those heavy hands. And as Carlos mentioned, you trade with him in the pocket at your own discretion. As our former dog of the week, Ryan Loader, found out that Bekoev does have power in the hands, and I think he's relied on that in his previous fights before he fought Usuri. I think he felt like he could just trade with people and really just let his powerful shots land, and he was just kind of falling in love with his hands. But in this matchup, I think wherever this fight goes, he's going to be able to have success. I think Gore is a little bit more technical. He'll throw in different attacks when it comes to like the kicks and things like that. But outside of a guillotine here for Tresean Gore, I think Bekoev should have all the success he needs. I think on the feet, he's going to feel the power of Bekoev. I think Bekoev's going to, once he touches him, he's going to be able to kind of walk him down. If he wants to mix in the wrestling, I think he's the better wrestler here. And like I said, wherever I think this fight goes, I think Bekoev will have success. Tresean Gore, at this point, I'm like I said, he's just hanging around to me inside the UFC. I think Azamat Bekoev all the way, big favorite for a reason. Put him in all your parlays this week. He should be able to get this one done inside the distance again with another early knockout, in my opinion. So Azamat Bekoev, don't prove me wrong. And Tresean Gore, I never liked you. I never thought you were any good. So I'll be happy to see you go, in my opinion. And next up at UFC Fight Night, Duncan taking on Moicano. We've got Hailey Cowan taking on Alice Pereira. No affiliation to Alex Pereira. Carlos, who you got in this one?
This one, I'm going to go with Alice Pereira to get it done. I think, you never know, because they're both kind of growing as fighters. They're both pretty much stand-up fighters, but I just think that Pereira is probably the heavier striker of the two, and you're going to be the aggressor, and she's probably going to try to walk down Cowan after a couple of strikes. The thing is, Cowan's the better athlete. I think that if she has any bit of wrestling or any bit of grappling in this fight, she needs to pull it out right now. And I know that tends to be Cowan's weakness, and I'd like for her to be able to use this as her strength if she can use any bit of the training that she's done on the ground, because I think that will give her success against Pereira. I just feel that that's not something she falls back to. She around on the outside, and I think Pereira does that too. It's safe, like bounce around on the outside, and then she's looking for her shots as well. So I think that this could be a very boring fight. I think we could look at two people that are looking to create a little bit more space so they can strike. Although Cowan is she bounces in and out, I do feel that she's not very effective. I do think Pereira is a little bit more effective. She can probably hurt Cowan if she times it right. The speed, the footwork of Cowan should be able to keep her out of harm's way. So I feel this will probably go to decision, but I'm going to take Pereira because I think she's going to walk forward, be the aggressor, and probably get this one done.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me. I got to say I flip-flopped on this one. I think it's pretty hard to really get a good, kind of circle, pin down skill set on a lot of both of these women in this fight. I think you look at Pereira, obviously 20 years old, still very, very young, and not necessarily the best UFC debut. In that fight, she's skirting around on the outside. She's throwing wild shots. She looked very nervous in there. She looked like a 20-year-old fighter that's coming into the big stage of the UFC, if I'm being honest. And, she's got this name, the Golden Girl, and I don't really see it yet unless there's a formidable skill set that we haven't seen, whether it be on the ground or on the feet. And that was just a poor performance. Who knows? But, 5-1, she won in her regional fights. She was able to be the champion over there, and now she's got this big step up in competition. But Hailey Cowan I think is a nice fight for her. And the reason I say that is Cowan is a great athlete, two-time All-American gymnast, but she's a good athlete, but not a good fighter. And as Carlos mentioned, she's got weaknesses and holes in the ground game. 3 of her 4 losses, she's been submitted, and even in her previous fight against Nora Cornell, she got submitted in that fight. And Nora Cornell is known for being a world-renowned Muay Thai fighter, and not necessarily known for her grappling. Cowan came out in that first fight, in that first round, and she was able to get the back. She was able to get on top and kind of control the rest of that first round, and then she comes out in the second round, gets taken down and submitted. So I have my holes in both of these females' ground games, along with their actual ability inside the cage. So who really knows what's going to happen? I'm just going to go with some dissension here and say that Cowan gets it done. I think she's going to be the one moving forward. I think that she's got a lot to prove. I do think that, you kind of look at her overall skill set in terms of her ability to kind of mix it up on the feet, that she likes to stay technical. I think Alice Pereira likes to kind of wing shots. I'm just hoping that Cowan kind of fights behind a jab, mixes in the clinch, and she's just the one in the judge's eyes that's able to move forward here. I don't really trust either woman. I wouldn't be surprised if either female here is able to get this fight done, whether it be inside the distance or go into the judges' scorecards. Not an accurate read for me, but I'm going to go with Cowan just because of the fact that I don't really like Pereira's game, but as a 20-year-old, she can make improvements from fight to fight and look better from fight to fight in drastic skill sets. So I'm going to go with Cowan, though. I just, until Pereira shows me more, I can't really pick her. So give me Hailey Cowan to get this one done. And next up at UFC Fight Night, Duncan taking on Moicano. We've got Darius Flowers with the long return here. We've been waiting for Lando Vannata. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I'm actually going to take Lando Vannata. It's been a while since we've seen both guys fight, actually. But Vannata's, he's slick. He's got very slick footwork, good side-to-side movement. He enters the pocket pretty quickly, pretty slick. But he still always enters with his hands down, so that's a problem, and leaves him open for counters. But what he does do very well is he strikes off his movement very well. As he's hitting an angle, he'll throw a shot. It may not be the most powerful shot, or if the guy's walking into it, it's going to make it, it's going to double the power, so it can be a powerful shot. And he sometimes catches guys off guard with those. But usually he strikes one strike at a time, and that's usually the problem, is he needs a little bit more volume. For somebody that athletic, he is pretty smooth. He's very quick. Throw a couple different shots out in good number and keep a high guard. And, I think he would have had a lot more success in his UFC career. But with that said, I just feel that, he has good wrestling. I think he avoids the ground very well. And, to me, I just feel that they've both been laid off for a while. I'm going to take Vannata because I feel he's probably the superior athlete. I think in the submission department, if he's looking for it with his wrestling, he'll be smooth in his transitions to get there. I think in his striking, he's probably going to be able to overwhelm Flowers, because Flowers doesn't have a very high volume either, and his striking isn't anything to brag about as well. But Vannata just has very good movement. In short, I'm going to have to take Vannata because I think that he's probably going to land the cleaner shots, and he's going to keep this fight on the feet. I know Flowers will probably want to get it to the ground if he can, but just to slow down the movement. But I just think Vannata is going to be able to exploit the openings of Flowers on the feet. So Lando Vannata to get it done.
Yeah, let me just start by saying, if you're enjoying the content here, hit that like and subscribe buttons. We've got one of the most exciting fights on this card ready to be broken down by yours truly. And when you think about the UFC and that the highest level competition, there is people out there from Brazil to China to the US to Russia that are training their asses off daily for an opportunity to fight in the biggest promotion in the world. We're not talking PFL, no, we're talking about the UFC. That bald-headed fuck Dana White sits there and tells us the best will fight the best. And that's exactly what we've got here in Lando Vannata taking on Darius Flowers. Let me just start off by saying that. And we've got beast mode here in Darius Flowers, that when you look at his previous performances, I don't think he's UFC level. I think he gets taken down far too easily, and that's the angle I'm taking in this fight. And I think Vannata can come in here after a 3-year layoff. That's right, I said 3-year layoff here, as a confident 2-1 favorite. And I think he can come in here and I think he can get the takedowns. I think if he's smart, he comes in, he shoots for double legs, he gets his fight to the ground, he uses jiu-jitsu. You see in his previous fight with with Evan Elder, Darius Flowers I'm talking about. Evan Elder was able to take him down and get that arm triangle. You've seen it as well. Michael Johnson was able to mix in takedowns. Matthews was able to sub him. And even when you go and watch Flowers on the regional scene, he gets taken down, he gets submitted, he gets controlled on the ground if the guy doesn't have the jiu-jitsu. Well, Vannata, he does have the jiu-jitsu, and you can make fun of it whether you want to or not, but Vannata does come from a wrestling background. He had 1 year in Division 1. For whatever reason, he didn't get along. He didn't stay in college. And when I was reading and looking into this with Vannata, that he's a free spirit, as he likes to describe, and college just wasn't for him. So whatever that means, it kind of falls true with his UFC career, that maybe the UFC is just not for him and he doesn't take it seriously. But I think he's a little bit more technical on the feet. I think when it comes to the wrestling, he can get Flowers down. If he's taking this fight seriously, he can come in here and use his jiu-jitsu and maybe find that submission, or at least use his wrestling to get Flowers down, hold him down. You know, beast mode, whether you agree with that nickname or not, let me know when you switch it on, Darius Flowers, because it sure hasn't been there so far in the UFC. So give me Lando Vannata here to get this one done. I'm going to say he uses his wrestling and ultimately either finds a submission or rides out top control to win the unanimous decision victory. And next up at UFC Fight Night, Duncan taking on Moicano. We've got Stewart Nicoll taking on Alexandro Costa. Carlos, who you got in this one?
On this one, I'm going to take Costa to get this one done. Only because I think, Nichols does have decent wrestling. I think he has, good submissions, but I think Costa just has, good takedown defense. He's live for a submission as well. He's one of those guys that he can hurt you on the feet and he can club and sub you. Once you're hurt, he can come and finish you off with a submission at the end. I don't think Nichols can keep Costa down, even if he does get him down. And if he does get him down, I just feel that, Costa could probably reverse position pretty easy, get a good sweep. I do feel that, Urseg and Albazi, they had a hard time keeping Costa down on his back pretty much. So how is Nicoll going to be able to do that? I think Costa's going to be the more aggressive guy. I think he's going to throw. He doesn't just throw one strike at a time. He does throw a couple shots at a time. And I just feel that pressure is probably going to make Nicoll start to fall apart because he does throw hard at the same time. I just feel the pressure, the force will force Nicoll to probably shoot when he doesn't want to. And, at that point, Costa's going to see it coming. He's going to be able to stuff it, probably scramble, get to a better position, and just beat him up from there or beat him up on the feet. So Costa to get it done.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I feel fairly confident in Alexandro Costa here, obviously a training partner of Diego Lopez over at Lobo Gym. And I've been impressed with Costa. I think he's well-rounded. And I got to say, even though I made Stewart Nicoll a former dog of the week, he fights like a regional scene guy, let's just be honest. And Stewart Nicoll's a guy that he comes in with plan A and he doesn't have plan B. He wants to mix in the grappling. He wants to shoot for takedowns and he wants to get you to the ground and use his jiu-jitsu. He wants to club and sub you. And if he can't get you to the ground, he has no plan B. And I think he's going to struggle here with Costa. As Carlos said, I think Costa does a good job of being able to get back to his feet if he is taken down, decent takedown defense. And I think the real discrepancy in this fight is going to be Costa's ability to kind of move forward. I think he has the short, stocky build where he keeps a nice, tight, high guard. And he doesn't necessarily throw in combinations, but the shots he does throw one at a time are with power, with intent to kind of, do damage and land big shots on his opponent. And I think with Stewart Nicoll, he's a guy that, when it comes to the feet, he's really, on the striking, he is kind of just pitter-pattering. He's a guy that wants to be able to take you down. And if he can't, he's not landing damaging shots in those transitions. And when he shoots in for takedowns and he's kind of got you in a compromised position, he's not looking to do damage. And I think with Costa, he is going to be able to capitalize on his jiu-jitsu. He is a black belt himself. And I think with Nicoll, he's not going to be able to control Costa for long periods of this fight. And we saw in the Jesus Aguilar fight that Nicoll leaves his neck out there, and he is, kind of leaving himself exposed for submissions that I think Costa can capitalize on. I wouldn't be surprised if Costa is able to submit Nicoll on the ground, but I think realistically, if this fight plays out on the feet, Costa's going to have the bigger moments. He's got the more heavier hands, and I think realistically, this is going to be pretty much an easy win for Costa. I think wherever the fight goes, he should be better, and I don't see a way, unless Nicoll's able to kind of pitter-patter on the outside and have more volume, that he's going to be able to win this one. So give me Alexandro Costa here to get this one done and get back in the win column. And next up at UFC Fight Night, Duncan taking on Moicano. We've got Robert Ruchała taking on José Delano. Carlos, who you got in this one?
And this one, I like Delano to get this one done. I think Delano's the heavier striker. I think he mixes head, body, head very good. Goes to the body, attacks his opponent's cardio. He's a very good counter striker. He's very patient. He finds the openings, pressures with his feet, not really with volume. So as he closes the distance, it's kind of forcing his opponents to throw or shoot, and that's where he's starting to make his reads. So against somebody like Ruchała, who's kind of just waiting to he's just kind of waiting to throw one or two strikes and then shoot, look for a takedown or something like that. I think Delano's going to force him to make a lot of mistakes so he could see it coming earlier. But Delano's, I think he's a very heavy favorite if I'm not mistaken in this fight, and I don't understand why, because Ruchała is one of those guys where he can pressure you enough and make it an uglier fight enough just to keep Delano on his back feet sometime. And it's not the fact that he's that good and that he's going to hurt him and that he's going to get the submission. I just think that Ruchała makes you have to work. He makes you have to look for different angles. He makes you have to fight. And I just think him being that big of an underdog is probably not a good not a good idea, because I'm like, he can be busy enough to possibly squeak out a position. But what I like about Delano is the fact that he's very measured in everything that he does. He doesn't pretty much load up on anything. He's going to throw the shots that are there, that are open. He's going to make openings with that. And his pressure is pretty much what makes the openings. I like the fact that he's very calm in the ring. He's very relaxed, and he makes very good decisions, very good fight IQ. So I'm going to take Delano to get it done. I just feel that Ruchała leaves a lot of openings when he, not that he gets frustrated, but it looks like sometimes he doesn't know how to get inside, so he just rushes inside. And against somebody like Delano, that's just asking for trouble. So Delano to get it done.
Yeah, two for Delano here. I got to say, I don't agree with this 4-1 price tag here on a 4-1 favorite in Delano. UFC debut, we've seen that kind of be, derailed at times and something you've got to be careful of. But his fight over on Contender Series against Exposito, I thought he looked good. He looked like a guy that, is ready for the UFC. As Carlos mentioned, he stalks with the feet. He's got good footwork to be able to set up his strikes. He's got power in the hands. And even though he is kind of, just touching, it's not necessarily that he steps in and puts all of his weight behind his shots, but he carries a lot of power even when he is doing that. And I think Robert Ruchała is a guy, he wants to get to the grappling. And that's kind of where I have my discrepancy in this 4-1 favorite in this matchup is I think on the feet, Delano is going to have all the advantages. He's going to be the one pressing forward. He's going to be the one doing the more damage on the feet. Robert Ruchała, he has kickboxing. He can strike, but it's not where his bread is buttered. And I think with Ruchała, he wants to look to get this fight to the ground. And he was able to, have moments against William Gomez over there in France in that decision that he lost, where he was able to get the fight to the ground. And I think with Delano, you go back and look at that Contender Series performance, there was a moment where Exposito was able to, kind of get into a guillotine position. And I think if Robert Ruchała gets that opportunity in the grappling, he might be able to capitalize there and he might be able to find the submission. But I'm going to say Delano gets this one done. I think he's going to be the one, pressing forward, ripping to the body, landing the bigger shots in the small cage here in the apex. But I think a 4-1 favorite's kind of crazy. I think if this one plays out on the feet, it's going to be all Delano. I think if Ruchała is able to get some takedowns, get some top pressure, look for the submission, he might be able to pull off the upset, maybe him by submission. If the odds are crazy, we might be able to sprinkle that for our betting video. But ultimately, I'm going to go with Delano here. I think that the striking is going to be too much for Ruchała, and ultimately, I think he's going to be able to have success in his UFC debut. But 4-1 favorite, I think not. Maybe like minus 300, minus 270. I'd feel that. But I think Robert Ruchała, his grappling might surprise some people. But give me Delano here to get it done with the striking. And next up at UFC Fight Night, Duncan taking on Moicano. We've got Manolo Zecchini taking on Tommy McMillen. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I'm going to go with McMillen in this one. And, on the Contender Series, when he was there, he looked a bit sloppy in his striking, and it looked like he was fighting through fatigue. You know what I mean? So maybe it was just the pressure of, pretty much like as they say, you're fighting for your job. It's the most intense job, interview you're going to have, the Contender Series. So I think McMillen probably felt some pressure there, but I look at his past fights and he doesn't really fight like he looks tired. He fights pretty decently. And when I say that, the only reason I say that is because Zecchini seems to be a little hesitant sometimes on his feet. He has good technique. He has the abilities to stand with you, but he's not really the aggressor. He's not going to throw in big number. He's going to throw one shot at a time, whereas McMillen's going to pressure forward and he's going to throw and he's going to throw and he's going to try to hurt you. But that could also work against him because he could get caught with something on the way in, just being a little sloppy and being a little reckless. But I just feel McMillen overcommits to a lot of his punches. And that can be an issue where it leaves Zecchini able to counter and create that opening. Honestly, in this one, I just feel that the pressure and just the style of McMillen is going to be a problem for Zecchini, because when Zecchini's actually to shoot, and McMillen loves guillotines, and I just know, I believe, if I remember correctly, Zecchini has been caught with a couple of guillotines, and that's McMillen's bread and butter right there for a submission. So I feel that he's going to, he bends. Also another issue when he's going for takedowns. He's going to bend, leave his head out. I feel McMillen's probably going to be looking for that submission right there. But on the feet as well, I just feel that McMillen is going to be the aggressor. He's going to come forward. He's going to throw those long shots. He mixes up his strikes well, although they don't look that well. They're a little sloppy, but he does throw them. He got a little sting on them, and I feel the pressure is going to start to make Zecchini back down. He's going to start to wilt a little bit, and I think McMillen gets it done. I'm not confident about it based on how he looks when he's fighting. I can't tell if he's tired or not. And I just feel that Manolo doesn't have the ability to capitalize on that. So, yeah, there was a sloppy breakdown, but the best I could do with what I saw. So I'm going to go with McMillen. I feel that guillotine can happen, and I feel that if that doesn't happen, I feel the pressure is probably going to, the volume will get the decision for him.
Yeah, two for McMillen here. I share the same sentiments Carlos does. Not necessarily a confident breakdown from me either. I think Tommy McMillen, obviously training partner of Sugar Sean O'Malley, and a guy as well, 9-0, but he's a guy, when you look at his skill set, like Carlos said, he is very wild, and you go back and look at that Contender Series performance, he was dropped, and ultimately, he was in an oh shit guillotine. He was able to fight out of that and show a lot of toughness, a lot of grit, and didn't quit on himself. And I think in this fight, that's going to be enough to beat a guy like Zecchini. Zecchini is a guy obviously coming off of a knockout loss to Morgan Charrier. And I just think realistically, he's a guy that you can back up, you can get in his face, and you can just make fights, kind of tough for him, where he's a guy that's not going to come forward. He's going to kind of let you dictate where the fight takes place. And I think he's very finishable. He doesn't have a lot of head movement. And I think really it's just a matter of time before McMillen's able to come in here and find the finish, whether that is on the ground or on the feet. I'm going to say it's going to be on the feet. I think Zecchini on the feet is not necessarily a guy that you want to underestimate. I think he can definitely crack, but I think he just leaves holes for a guy like McMillen that can come in and kind of throw some funky shit and ultimately catch him. I think on the ground, if he really wants to play it safe, McMillen can definitely go for the takedown and ultimately have success in the grappling, where he's going to be able to find the submission. I think Zucchini's ground game is definitely something to be desired, but I'm going to say that Tommy comes in here like a bat out of hell. He fights crazy early in the first round, and he's able to get the finish here. But I got to say, man, he opened as a -1,000 favorite. I do not see that being the case. Watch me say that, and he comes out and gets an early finish and looks great. But I think there's a lot of hype behind this kid. I think he's reckless, better than good. And I do think that he comes in here and gets the finish, but he's definitely a guy I'm going to look to fade later on throughout his UFC tendency. This is about as lower level competition as the UFC could find. And I think he's going to make it look easy, but I think as we move forward, he's going to be a guy we're going to look to fade based on the name and who he trains with. But give me Tommy McMillen here to get the finish and obviously prove me and Carlos right in this one. And next up at UFC Fight Night, Duncan taking on Moicano. We've got Guilherme Pat taking on Thomas, the Tank Engine, Petersen. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I'm going to take Pat in this one. I'm just going based on his last fight with this guy named Alan Fry, because that one I got to see a little bit more of Pat in, and he was able to defend takedowns very well in that fight. And on the feet, he's a little bit more athletic, a little bit more loose on his feet to be able to get things done. Did a lot of things in the clinch as well, because you know, Fry was also trying to cut the distance and get him to the ground, and Pat had to do most of his work in close range. But I just think that the question for me is like, is that guy the same type of wrestler that Petersen is? And you don't see Petersen doing this all the time, trying to go for takedowns in the middle of the cage, hit the corner and get the takedown, but he has done it before in the past. Now, the guy he did it on, was he a good athlete? Probably not. I don't even remember who it was, but I have seen him be able to do it. And if you just have that wrestling ability, you have the skill to do it once, you might be able to do it again. It's going to be up to Pat to be able to defend it. And I think he's probably going to be a little bit more light on his feet, a little bit more fleet of foot to be able to change the angle with him and get the hooks in and be able to defend the takedown. I think if it stays standing, I think Pat is going to be able to do a lot on the feet to keep Petersen from, I don't know. I think Pat's ability on the feet is going to make Petersen go for those takedowns. And I think a lot of those takedowns are going to be out of desperation, because he's going to get not pieced up. Pat is still a work in progress, but I think he's just a little bit better on the feet than Petersen. And I think he's going to have a lot of problems getting Pat down. And I think a lot of those takedowns are going to be out of desperation. I think he's going to hurt him on the feet. And I think in those scrambles of forcing those takedowns, I think Pat might end up on top, and you might see a lot of ground and pound. So I just think that Petersen, he's going to change angles, he's going to change levels, he's going to grab that single leg, and he's going to try to get him down. And it's ultimately going to be up to Pat to stop this. And it's a tough one, because Petersen, that's what he does. He'll get you against the cage, he'll grab a single leg in the middle of the ring, and he'll try to get you down. But I'm going to go with Pat. I think he's going to be a little bit more athletic, a little bit more technical than I think when it comes to takedown defense, and he's probably going to get this one done.
Yeah, I'm glad you see it similar to how I see this one, but Pat's obviously, the narrative on him coming into these fights is that people are going to wrestle him and take him down, and what's his takedown defense like? And if you go back and look at that Fry performance in his UFC debut, Fry doesn't have the credentials in terms of Thomas Petersen's wrestling, but he was able to defend the takedowns, dig for the underhook, get to space, and land his big strikes. And Pat is a guy that doesn't throw a ton of kicks. He'll throw the odd knee in the clinch, but where he does his best work is using that 6'5" frame with the 81-inch reach, and he's landing kind of big, shots in sort of the mid-range and the boxing combinations. And when he hits you, it hurts. You could see that with Fry's face. It was busted up in that fight. And when you kind of do a deep dive on Thomas Petersen, I wanted to really know the narrative around his wrestling. When people come in and they say, Pat's got a weakness in takedown defense and he's fighting a wrestler, like, how good is Thomas Petersen's actual wrestling? And they talk about him being a 2-time state champion in wrestling over in high school, but when he went to college, 18-10 record. He did redshirt 1 year as well. Former LFA heavyweight champion, so he is credentialed and he is improving. But when he wrestled, he wrestled at 197 pounds. So obviously now fighting at 265. I think he lacks a lot of speed at the heavyweight division as well. Obviously only 6'1" here to 6'5". And he doesn't make up for it with his speed. It's not like he's a 6'1", light on his feet, athletic, bouncing in and out of range, heavyweight. He is a little bit slow, a little bit lumbering at times, does fight behind the jab. And he's a guy as well that he is a mechanic over in the Union in Minnesota. So he's not necessarily fighting full time. And all of those things just, to me, just spell recipe for disaster here against Pat. We saw Thomas Petersen get knocked out against Vitor Petrino in his last fight. And I think the difference in this one is I think it's going to happen a little bit sooner with Pat, because Petrino is a guy that he when you get him in the clinch, when you get him into sort of, wrestling exchanges, he wants to kind of show you he's very strong. He wants to show you that he can wrestle as well. Whereas Pat doesn't have any interest in, kind of mixing in the wrestling. He wants to get to space. He wants to land his big bombs. Whereas Petrino, I think he has an ego about himself where he wants to show you how strong he is and how he can wrestle as well. So I think Petrino, was able to find that knockout when Petersen got tired in that fight. As Petersen slows down from trying to shoot in for takedowns, I think Pat's able to find the chin much sooner in this one. So give me Pat to get the knockout here. I think he's going to be able to defend the takedowns, get to space, and ultimately find the chin here of Thomas Petersen, who's going to struggle to get takedowns here against a more athletic heavyweight. And we might be looking at Thomas Petersen getting cut soon. So I think this train is going to get derailed sooner than we think. And next up at UFC Fight Night, Duncan taking on Moicano. We've got Rafael, Estevam taking on Ethyn Ewing. And if you're enjoying the content, hit that like and subscribe button as Carlos lets you know who he's got in this matchup.
I'm going to have to go with Estevam to get this one done. I like the good striking that Ewing offers, in this fight. He does mix in his strikes very well with the kicks and the knees. It's just, he looks good. He looks sharp. It looks clean. The technique is great. The boxing's good. The footwork's, the counters, whatever you want to talk about. His defense was nice. He has a nice high guard, good footwork. His wrestling defense, from what I've seen, looked okay. But from what I've seen so far, from his past opponents, I'm not sure how high level their wrestling was. But, in his fight in the UFC, I'm trying to remember, who did he fight? Wellmaker. He's not known for his wrestling and for takedown, because he was getting pieced up on the feet a little bit. And obviously he was able to stuff those because Wellmaker gave up on him. But is he going to be able to stop Estevam from taking him down? Somebody that level of wrestling. And I don't know Estevam's background of wrestling, but I do know his grappling background. But whatever the background is, his takedowns are very solid. He gets a good grip around the waist, around the hips, and he's ready to pull him in and get you to the ground. He's got very good throws. And once he's got you down, he's got very good top control, good hip pressure, good chest-to-chest pressure. And he does a lot of work from the side mount, too. So side guard, sorry, half guard, my fault. And pretty much, I just feel that once he's down there, what exactly is Ewing going to do to get up? How technical can he be to get back to his feet? How good is he going to be? How much of a struggle is it going to be for him to get back? And while he's getting back to his feet, Estevam's going to be raining down some shots on him and looking for those openings. I feel that he's going to test Ewing's cardio in this one. And that's going to be a big test because Ewing has very good cardio. Estevam, though, tends to get a little tired, because he does a lot of grappling. But he also is fighting a higher weight class, so that could change as well. And he might be able to be a little stronger. He might be able to hit a little heavier. Estevam, he can strike just enough to close the distance, stuff that he needs to do. But if this stays on the feet and Ewing's able to stuff those takedowns, I feel Ewing is going to have the advantage in this one. I just don't feel he's going to be able to. I mean, Estevam's throws, when he gets his hands locked, I haven't seen anyone able to stuff him. You know what I mean? They can't stop it. So he's got a good strong takedown, good strong grip. And once he gets you, he's got you down. So I'm going to go with Estevam to get it done. In the striking department, I'm just going to throw this in there after, at the end here, is with Ewing, I think everything's good defensively. Estevam, he can hit. I just feel like they're a little bit wider sometimes. They don't look as sharp. But yet again, Ewing doesn't move his head as well. He does keep a high guard, but he doesn't move his head. So when I say Estevam has enough striking, he has enough striking to open that up, make him have to keep a high guard, which he can get into the hips that way and get the takedown. So there's ways that he's going to do this and that he can control Ewing. And I was very impressed with Ewing against Wellmaker. I just feel that Estevam is a different puzzle to figure out. So Estevam to get it done.
Going with some dissension here. I'm going with Ethyn Ewing, and I got to just kind of put the highlights on this whole weight situation. And Estevam used to fight at 125, and he missed weight in 2 out of his 3 fights in the UFC. Obviously still undefeated, but obviously that's caused this move, whether it's the matchmakers of the UFC or him that's decided to move up to 135. Ethyn Ewing on his short notice debut against Wellmaker fought at 145, now fighting at his original weight class at 135. So the narratives around Estevam's cardio and kind of Ethyn Ewing's cardio, which looked very good on short notice, might be a factor now as Ethyn Ewing is now cutting weight where he wasn't before. He was able to fight at 145 quite effectively. That might drain his cardio. And then with Estevam, him not having to drain so much out of his system with the weight cut, he might fight better now and have better cardio. So a lot of question marks around this matchup here. Obviously, striker versus grappler matchup here. And like Carlos said, I was impressed with Ethyn Ewing on short notice against Wellmaker. He has well-timed shots, good footwork, very light on his feet, bounces around on the outside. And when you go and look at Ethyn Ewing's fights, he fought a guy called Billy Brand out of Team Alpha Male, and he was taken down early and often in that first round. He was able to get back to his feet very technically, dig for an underhook. He's able to get back to his feet. He showed urgency in that fight, and he was able to put that guy away with a nice counter right hand, and that's where he was able to win the title over in that regional scene promotion. When you look at Estevam, obviously, I think a lot of his striking is really just to get to the wrestling, get to the hips. I don't necessarily think that he's as much of a threat on the feet. A lot of his shots that he throws on the feet are really just for him to be able to get into his wrestling and back you up against the fence. I think out at range, he struggles to get takedowns out in the middle of the octagon. I think if he can't back up Ethyn Ewing, I think he's going to be too fast for him. I think he's going to be darting around on the outside, really just kind of pot-shotting Estevam. And I think if he's able to kind of defend a few takedowns, it really might, kind of wear on the gas tank here of Estevam, where we've seen him struggle in the past. Obviously, as I said, he might look better at this weight class, but until I see it, I'm not going to pick it. Give me Ethyn Ewing here. I think he's going to have a little bit more damage. I think he's going to have a little bit more for Estevam on the feet. And I think realistically, if Estevam can't get him down, I think it's going to be night and day in the striking for Ewing. So give me Ethyn Ewing to get this one done. Obviously, this is a close fight. The odds are very, very close. And I do think, a 14-0 wrestler here in Estevam might be rejuvenated at this weight class, but I'm going to go with Ewing. I'm going to say he does more damage on the feet and he's able to defend the takedown. So give me Ethyn Ewing to get this one done. And next up at UFC Fight Night, Duncan taking on Moicano. We've got Brenderson Ribeiro taking on Abdul Rahman Yakhyaev. Carlos, short breakdown from you.
Yeah, I'm going with Yakhyaev in this one. He takes angles when he comes in forward and when he's striking. He's got loose striking. They're a bit looping, like the cast punch and everything, but that's Sama style of striking. And I feel he's going to get the finish on the feet. I don't think he's going to have to mix in any takedowns. I just feel, Ribeiro, he's going to come in. He's probably going to swing a little wild, overextend himself, and get caught. And if he doesn't get caught with something there and he ends up on the ground, he's probably just going to get grounded and pounded by Yakhyaev. So Ribeiro, he looks the part. He looks very athletic. He looks strong. He just struggles to get it done. So Yakhyaev getting it done. He's probably going to get the finish in the first.
Yeah, got to say, I'm pretty high on this guy, Yakhyaev. Before we filmed the breakdown here, I was saying to Carlos, when we broke this guy down on Contender Series, you watch tape on this guy, that even on the regional scene, some breakdowns of certain guys, you just see that they just have the it factor. I think that's what we see here in Yakhyaev, the Chechen-born fighting out of Turkey fighter here, taking on Ribeiro. And, Ribeiro is just, a lamb to the slaughter, in my opinion. I think we see an exact same repeat performance here from Yakhyaev. We might see a knockout this time. He's well-rounded on the feet, nice kickboxing, very technical. He can mix in the wrestling, take your back and choke you out. He's always looking for an anaconda or a das or, kind of looking to take your back and choke you out. I think he finds the finish here early in round one. Ribeiro, I said to Carlos, I think the only real skill set or the real thing that I like about him is his calf kicks. After that, I think he sucks on the ground. He can't defend a takedown. I think, as Carlos said, he looks the part. He looks athletic, but, you can look the part all you want. This isn't a bodybuilding competition. It's not about aesthetics. It's about being able to get the job done, and I think that's exactly what Yakhyaev does here. I think he comes in. I think he knows this is another lamb to the slaughter. Small cage in the apex. Ribeiro's not going to have anywhere to run, and I think Yakhyaev comes in here and smokes him early, either on the feet with the knockout, or he looks to get the takedown and ultimately find the submission. So give me Abdul Rahman Yakhyaev. Remember the name. You're going to be hearing a lot about it here at 205. I think he gets the finish here early and often. And that brings us to the co-main event here for UFC Fight Night. Duncan taking on Moicano. And if you're enjoying the content, hit that like and subscribe button as we break down Tabitha Baby Shark Arichi taking on Verna Jandiroba. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I got Jandiroba. I think she has good enough striking to get close the distance, get those takedowns, get to the clinch, do some work in the clinch. I actually think that she's going to be able to be a little better on the feet than Ricci. She might land a lot more shots. Her striking has gotten a little bit better. She works off her jab pretty decently with her distance, and she has an effective, at times she can be effective with her 1-2. She utilizes a high guard, which she just pressures with her feet at that point, and that also forces some of her opponents to throw. And when they throw, they plant their feet, and Jandiroba is able to close the distance from there because nobody really wants to close the distance with her, and that's how she's able to get them to do it. Having that said, if Jandiroba gets on top and or on the bottom, she could be a problem as well. But if she gets on top, she's going to do a lot of damage on the top, and she's going to obviously open up for submissions. What I did like about Tabitha Ricci, and it makes me second guess it, was how she was able to play that fight out, like we were talking about against Jillian Robertson, where she actually took Jillian Robertson down first. And that was a smart game plan because she knew she could stay safe, and she knew that Jillian Robertson would play jiu-jitsu off her back. So she didn't really struggle to get back up. She just knows, I need to look for a submission. But with someone like Jandiroba, she stays so busy, whether she's on her back or on top, she's always looking to get a better position, always looking for a submission, and always looking to sweep. Jillian Robinson wasn't really looking to sweep, wasn't looking to get back up. She was just kind of looking for submissions from there, and then Ricci was able to stand up, and that's when Robinson was able to get up, and it ate up a lot of the time on the clock. And then on the feet, she was able to put in some work. But I don't think that would work against Jandiroba, just because Jandiroba, I think, is probably a little bit more of a threat on the feet than Ricci is. I think her striking has gotten better. I think she's probably the harder hitter of the two. And I do feel that on the ground, she's going to be a problem because although Ricci's also very skilled on the ground, I just feel that Jandiroba's always moving. She's always looking for something. She's always busy, throwing an elbow here and there, trying to create an open and looking for a submission. So I'm going to go with Jandiroba. I feel that too much movement, too much pressure. I think she's going to get it done.
I got to disagree. We've got to go for some dissension here in the co-main event. And if you're enjoying the content, hit that like and subscribe button. I know everybody's excited for this one. Hope you can detect the sarcasm in my voice. But I'm going with Tabitha Ricci here. Baby Shark to get it done. I'm done with Vernon Jandiroba. Obviously, a former dog of the week. She didn't get it done against Mackenzie Dern in that title fight. And I think we see some decline here at 37, 115 pounds. Obviously, decorated in terms of BJJ. But I think where she lacks realistically here is I think she's going to lack speed in this matchup. And I think when you look at Tabitha Ricci's skill set, you go back and look at her previous performances. She's a woman that likes to be able to get into the clinch. She wants to hold you there, beat you up with knees. She wants to be able to land elbows, uppercut you to the body, and really just kind of wear on you. And I think that she can push a pace in this fight. And I think that she's going to give Vernon Jandiroba opportunities to be able to take her down. But I think that she's going to be able to defend these takedowns. And what I'd really like to see her do is kind of stay out at space, stay out at range, and use this boxing that we keep hearing about. Her boyfriend is Callum Walsh, this high-level boxer, and she's been working on the striking and all this stuff that we're yet to kind of see. I want to see her keep this one out at range, pitter-patter here, and show off the boxing combinations against Vernon Jandiroba. In my opinion, I think that Tabitha Ricci hits harder. I think she's more athletic. I think she's faster to the punch. And I'd like to see her kind of keep this one out at range and use her striking. And I think Vernon Jandiroba, she is obviously very decorated on the ground, but you go look at Tabitha Ricci's background. Before she did kind of meet Callum Walsh and go for the boxing and have her MMA background, she was credentialed in BJJ herself, gi and no gi world champion twice, I believe, when she was a purple and blue belt. So she's decorated on the ground herself, and I think that she can stay safe. That's why she was able to have the confidence to be able to take Jillian Robertson down and stay safe and play in the guard there. I think if this fight does hit the mat, that I don't see Vernon Jandiroba to being able to submit Tabitha Ricci. I think that she can stay safe. But what I think this really comes down to is the damage. I think when you look at MMA and how it's scored, and how it's been getting scored recently especially, is that it's who does more damage. And I think if Vernon Jandiroba is playing jiu-jitsu, whether it be from bottom or on top, she's not going to be landing ground and pound and not going to be landing, a lot of damage. And I think Tabitha Ricci is going to be the one that's going to have the more damaging, more violent moments, and that's what it's going to come down to. So give me Tabitha Ricci here to get this one done. Not super confident, and I do think that she is going to play into the game of Vernon Jandiroba by falling into the clinch up against the fence, but I think she's able to stay safe and ultimately win with the striking. So give me Baby Shark to get it done. And that brings us to the main event here for UFC Fight Night. Duncan taking on Moicano. And we've got Chris Duncan taking on Renato Moicano. And it's no secret, I'm going to go first in this one. Dog of the week, Renato Moicano. Money Moicano, and that's why he's the dog of the week. We can rely on him here to cash for us as our back-to-back dog of the weeks. And to me, I think you look at this matchup and I think people are getting it wrong. You see Chris Duncan with his move over to American Top Team. He looks good. He's looked good in his previous fights, but there's always been question marks. And if you go back and look at the Balaji Oki performance, he was taken down in that one. In previous fights against Rebecca was able to get him down. And in most of his fights, he ends up in some sort of scramble or in some sort of position where I think Moicano can definitely capitalize, whether that's him taking his back, whether that's him having success getting him to the mat. And I think realistically, when you look at Chris Duncan, he's known for this one-punch power. I said it on the Dog of the Week breakdown. I'm saying it to Carlos as well previously that, the narrative around him is that he can, put people's lights out with the big right hand, and we're yet to see it. Most of his performances where he is able to get the finish, he's submitting guys. I think in this fight, he's definitely going to be the worst grappler out of the two. Moicano way more credentialed in the BJJ realm, and I think when it comes to the power that Chris Duncan is just not going to be able to put the lights out of Moicano. Moicano is not a guy that is chinny. I think that's the narrative around him, and I think on the feet, he's going to more than hold his own. If you go back and look at Duncan's performances, he's fighting lower down in the rankings. Moicano is fighting the absolute best of the best. A loss to Beneil Dariush where he was out, Beneil Dariush is a great grappler in himself, so Moicano can't capitalize on that high-level grappling. A loss to Islam Makhachev on short notice there, replacing the main event. There's no shame in losing to Islam, and I think realistically this fight is going to catch people off guard. That's why I'm making Moicano the dog of the week. He will refuse to lose, as he says in most of his post-fight speeches. He wants money and he's coming for a bonus, and I think the way that we see this fight play out, we're going to see Moicano have success on the feet with Duncan. I don't think he's necessarily going to clip him, but he's going to be able to back him up. Duncan's going to load up on a big shot. Moicano's going to be able to duck underneath. I think he's going to be able to get to that single leg that he likes. He's going to get to the body lock. I think he's going to be able to take Duncan down. And you look at that Matthaus-Rebecca fight. Chris Duncan did actually give up his back in a lot of the moments where he scrambles. And Moicano, when you go look at the highlight reel tape for Dog of the Week, he has one of the best back takes, I think, still in the UFC. He's able to take people's back in an absolute heartbeat. I think he takes the back of Chris Duncan when he gets up and gives up his back. I think we might see a rear naked choke here from Moicano. I'm going to say either first or second round. And I think realistically, people are just underestimating Renato Moicano. I think he gets on the mic here. Money Moicano reminds people of why he can't lose. Dog of the Week, going with the underdog here for 2 in a row. Carlos, who you got in this one?
This one as well, I'm going with Renato Moicano. I just feel that Chris Duncan, on the feet, I feel that Moicano's probably the heavier striker of the two, but he's also very skilled. I know Duncan is also very skilled in striking too, and he's gotten a lot better since going to American Top Team, but I do feel that Moicano can sting him because it is known that Duncan does get touched up early in the fight, and that can end up on the ground, and it can end up in a bad situation for him because Moicano's one of those guys who's going to jump all over you. He's going to ground and pound you, and he's going to look for the submission. Duncan kind of has the same game plan. I just don't think he has the ability to land something big on Moicano first, and then he's going to be fighting behind, like from behind, to try to catch up and get a better position. I also feel that Moicano can also bait him into going for a guillotine and ending up on the ground, ending up on top and doing a lot of damage from there. I do think that Duncan is a very tough kid, and he's resilient, but the people that he's being resilient against don't tend to be that big of a threat. Balaji Oki, he was able to beat him with submission game. That's probably a little bit of Oki's weakness there. And you know what I mean? And Oki's supposed to be this dangerous puncher, and he did hurt him, but he was able to capitalize on that. Against Rebecca, same thing. He was able to capitalize a lot in the striking. He took some shots. He was able to get down. And you know what I mean? He's a tough kid. He's able to come back. But what I do feel is Moicano's the type of guy that he's going to get on top. And Duncan is very skilled, but I do think Moicano's going to be able to get a lot of control once he gets him on top. And when you talk about taking his back, Duncan does give up bad positions, and he has a lot of confidence in his ability to defend. And it doesn't mean the fight's over because Moicano's got your back. But, Duncan, he's going to take a lot of ground and pound. If any fight, like you were talking about earlier, is a display of that, it's a Benoit Saint Denis. You can't just give up bad positions and hope that you're going to be able to create separation and get up without taking some damage. So I think Moicano, and the other thing too is I think Moicano is going to be able to chew up that lead leg if they stay standing. if Duncan's getting the better of the boxing exchanges, Moicano's rear leg kick it's heavy, and he's hurt a lot of guys with it, a lot of high level guys with it as well. And I just feel that Moicano is going to be able to get this done on the ground or on the feet. Duncan, he's good. He's gotten better. I think he's just got a little bit more to do. I think he's just a little bit better than him tactically. He knows what he wants to do, how he wants to do it. Whereas Duncan, I think he just goes with the flow of the fight. I think Moicano likes to set something up as well. So I'm going to take Moicano to get it done.
Absolutely. 2 for the dog of the week, looking to make it 2 in a row. And if you're enjoying the content, hit that like and subscribe button as Carlos lets you know what you need to do if you're enjoying the content.
All right, guys, if you're enjoying the content, which, we're happy that you guys are enjoying it. If you are, just make sure you like and subscribe. And we're very happy to see that the comment section's busy. Just let us know. It's good to have that feedback, that back and forth, and the exchanges. And, we're just happy how everything's going. So, guys, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.
Yeah, thank you for 400 subscribers. We pay attention to that sub count. Help us get to 500. We appreciate it. A lot of you guys are watching the content every single week, but not hitting that sub button. We know who you are. Look deep within yourself and donate to the Ground and Pound. And we'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
Peace.